Hello, everyone. I'm George Nguyen, editor at Search Engine Land, and thank you so much for joining us for this discussion with two of our Search Marketer of the Year winners. I've been saying Search Marketers of the Years, but that's just because my English isn't so good right now. Anyway, it's a title we award to the marketers that have changed the game for their organizations, for their clients, and just contributed to the community at large. I'm going to introduce them to you in just a second. You can see them on screen already. But first, I'd like to take a second to thank our award sponsor, Microsoft, for helping us recognize their fantastic work. Now let's meet them. First up, I'd like to introduce Colleen Harris, Product Manager for Business Intelligence at Synchro. Colleen, would you like to say hi?
Hi.
And I asked her earlier, those are Funkos in the background for you collectors out there. Okay, so a little bit about Colleen. She's been in digital marketing for over 13 years and works in the automotive sector with experience in healthcare and the entertainment verticals as well. I understand that you built your first website on GeoCities in the 90s. Many of you won't even recognize that name. But I also have that cred. I did that as a child. I'm not going to lie. I was a kid when I did it. She's spoken at numerous industry conferences, including SMX. She volunteers at nonprofits, giving them practical tricks to improve their organic visibility. And within her own organization, she's developed this 3-for-3 data approach that I thought was quite interesting. And we're going to be hearing about that shortly. But first, before that, I'm going to introduce you to, of course, Ashley Shapiro, Director of Account Services at Metric Theory. Hello, Ashley.
Hello.
She directly oversees several of her agency's largest clients and has what I imagine to be a C-suite level of management responsibilities, including a team of account leads, as well as Metric Theory's largest account services unit. It's safe to say she's doing it well. Of course, she's the winner of one of our awards this year. She led 6 of her agency's top 10 clients in Q4 of last year. So that represented what, like 15% of total revenue from that quarter, Ashley?
Correct.
That's not a small amount there. Very impressive. And internally, she's developed her organization's mentorship program and an employee recognition initiative. So management in terms of clients and in terms of her own colleagues. She also volunteers at the Food Bank of the Rockies and the Denver Children's Museum. Whew. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get more to learning more about how you won this award. I'm going to start with Colleen. Your Search Marketer of the Year entry leaned heavily into data as the source of truth. I think that just in a general sense, many marketers would agree. Like, yeah, we rely on data. That's how we guide our decisions. But why have you come to embrace it so heavily? There's definitely something that struck out, and I think you could describe it better than I can about your application.
I think we're all relying on data, but we're not trying to dump data on the customers. And that's where our approach has come and really been different, is that we're trying to find what are the most important goals for our clients and then finding the data that aligns for them. And it's always going to be different for each client. And there's always going to be tweaks or other things that you're doing. And I think that's where the difference is. So much in search is about, I want to know a direct causation. If I do X, Y, and Z, I will see a 30% lift in search, in volume, in clicks, or something like that. And there's never going to be that. So it seems like we've almost, and especially in some verticals, taken to dumping so much data on a client to try to prove our worth. We tried to pull it back a second and say, what is most important to an individual client for data so that they see the importance of the work we're doing, and then we work backwards from that.
Yeah, fascinating. You have to really let them know which of these figures is important, kind of guide them through these things. I want our viewers to kind of think about that and how they use data with their clients for a second as we shift gears over to Ashley and management here. First, I just want to know, how did you get yourself into this position? I feel like just reading your application, you must be spread thin.
That's a really good point. I would say I'm not spread thin, but I do have a lot of responsibilities. And there's always a game of prioritization at play and kind of understanding when your attention should be spent 100% on one thing and 0% on others, or 80% across the board. How I got to my position, really, if I'm being completely transparent, I didn't get there alone. Yes, am I motivated and driven? Absolutely. But I've had extremely, extremely excellent mentors and managers who've given me fantastic advice along the way and really been invested in my growth within, especially the metric theory organization. And I think that's what's assisted me in being able to scale with the amount of responsibilities I have.
Awesome. And of course, it's always a team effort. Let's talk about that team a little bit. Colleen, you've trained your own colleagues within your agency, your counterparts that work directly with dealership clients, on how to take advantage of Google Analytics. These aren't search professionals you're training, right?
No, so it was a lot of our account managers. So the day-to-day, who's interacting with a dealer to help put up offers, put up creative, things like that. Not people who were initially trained to do any sort of analysis or also any sort of recommendations. Like, I'm going to look at your data every month and give you the 3 most important things I see. And so that's really where that 3 for 3 came from. How do you take people who've never had to look at data before and not first have them feel overwhelmed where they want to run away from it, but also how do you help them figure out where to start? You've got to find those tangible places to start so they feel empowered to keep going.
And so I feel like in some organizations, especially, in-house, which is not what you do, but there might be an initial reaction to like, wait, what are you trying to get me to do? And isn't this your job kind of thing? Did you have pushback, or was there buy-in from management? How did that go?
So we have since about 2017, our leadership has been very invested into kind of this buy-in of let's talk about data and transparency. Especially within our automotive, there's so many third parties who produce all the widgets and gizbobs that you can put on a site that all have all of their own reporting. And it became very clear we had to be transparent so we could be the source of truth. Every vendor is going to give a dealer their own 20-page fancy report that says they saved the world and you should spend all of your money with them every month. Our clients get 8 to 10 of those every month. And so it's hard. Became very difficult for someone to really understand who's really telling me the truth and how do I do attribution and how do I understand, is it working and is it going on with? And these are also a lot of clients who aren't data people. And so that's been where it's come together of how do we break down and make data something that people who are not used to looking at data can really understand and really see that kind of direct impact. We're never going to get this one-to-one attribution or correlation, and we all need to get away from that. But you can start to say, these are the things I see, these are the things I'm going to do, and then we're going to keep checking at it. So we really built this 3 for 3 as a simple process to help everybody feel more transparent and take this, let's talk about transparency and then turn it into something. Like, we can all talk about great press releases about how we're being transparent with data, but how do we make it actionable for somebody in a day-to-day?
Excellent. Ashley, I was wondering, with your dealing with clients, do you also have experience like maybe trying to help them understand the data or embrace the data that you're providing them when they might not appreciate it?
All the time. That happens a lot. I think I completely agree with everything and all the points Colleen has made around data transparency and especially attribution. There's never going to be a one-to-one. Attribution is, until we have more concrete analytical abilities and there's not walled gardens, it's an art, not a science. And so I think my personal opinion on that and kind of how I viewed it is, a data is only as good as you and the clients both understanding the insights and agreeing upon the insights there. It's very easy for a client to tie themselves to one specific KPI or metric, and either that's because it's a value for them or they're not quite understanding the other metrics. So there is a lot of education that's necessary and also bringing the data to life. So I think one thing that we're constantly thinking about is when you're providing data at Metric Theory, we have proprietary Compass reporting. So it allows advertisers to have their data real time. When we are providing that, it's also our responsibility to bring a narrative to that data and kind of bring that to life and make sure that they're understanding what is the key takeaway to what I am seeing and what does that mean for my business? So what?
Absolutely. So I want to know about, you said there's reporting from metric theory. Is that like just what I'm kind of used to? You might have like a monthly or quarterly business report in which all the metrics are provided, and then you tell them a story around that, and you kind of make sure that they understand what everything means and what the plan is going forward.
Yeah, so our Compass reporting is actually a report we pull together that all of our clients have access to real time, and it's customized to their specific needs. So whether you're the decision maker, you're on the exec level and you need an exec summary report, or you're on the ground floor with us making those strategic decisions, you'll get access to that on a daily basis, and it's updated real time. And then we're constantly talking with our advertisers either daily or weekly regarding what we're seeing and bringing that to life. And then of course you always have, the quarterly reviews in which we kind of wrap it all up and put a bow on it and have that full concrete debrief.
And that's going to be my segue, is this real-time reporting, because Colleen, you built this data studio report for your dealership clients, right? Can you tell me a bit more about that? Why was there a need for that?
It was a need because Google Analytics allows our clients to really standardize everything. And all of your different vendors pass your data in, and then you can really start to do the judging. But both for dealers, we found, and for everybody else, there's so much going on in a day to remember that I have to click into the 5 different places in order to be able to find that one metric that I need. No one's got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. So the data studio allowed us to really bring the most important things into one dashboard. And then it also goes back to that data matters to the site. I can't say what is most important to a dealer in California is going to be the same to a dealer in Texas. So this allows us to be able to scale something out while still having standard like customization for the individual dealer, so that we're all having a data story, to what I actually talked about there, that everybody agrees upon and ties into the business goals.
Absolutely. But so at the agency I used to work at, which was a few years ago, we didn't do anything like that. Of course, they all had their Google Analytics and things like that, but it was all on them. Everything else was just kind of provided on a quarterly basis when we were reviewing how our initiatives have done, how their organic visibility had changed, and so on and so forth. But it was really on us. And I feel like when you have provided them the metrics, all the metrics that they need to know about, and they can get to those at any point in time, I'm sure that you don't do this, but I feel like a lazy marketer would be like, well, it's there. Why do I need to provide a monthly report? Why would I have to do that? Have you seen that they synergize together? They're two sides of the same coin, or does one kind of replace the other? I want to hear from Ashley first about that, and then I want to hear from you right after, Colleen.
I do not think one replaces the other, because going back to my point around the fact that what we are in the agency space, and especially as the industry is advanced as much as it has, is consultants. We are digital consultants, which means we need to take all of the data that they're seeing and bring it to life. And the expectation is and should be, we need to be telling our executive level contacts or our points of contact something they don't already know about their business, whether it's an audience insight or it's consumer behavior trends, et cetera. And a lot of what we're analyzing and bringing to life is valuable information that helps them figure out the next steps. So that's kind of my view on that.
Awesome. Colleen?
I would totally agree with all of that. And that's actually where you talked about a little in my intro, the 3 for 3 came from, is we had to find, in creating the curriculum to teach people how to do this kind of consultative work with data, how do we find something that everybody can wrap their brain around? Especially if I have internal folks who have not worked with data before, and I have dealers who are very smart people working with data, but may not be used to this level of web data. How do we normalize understanding and that consultative aspect, which is where I just kind of was like, all right, dealers get 100 emails and 100 phone calls and stuff's coming at them all day. how do we narrow it down to, if I give them 3 things I notice, they're going to pay attention to one of them and they're going to retain one of them. So let's figure out what's the most important message. And then, as well as keeping that consultative conversation together, what are the 3 things I'm going to do from that data? So then it brings them a reason to come back to a call the next time in that next conversation to see how that went. But we found that's the way to kind of make it impactful and also make it that we're not dumping data on our clients, that we've looked at it and we found the most important things that we want to talk to you about, because we know your time is important and you don't need another 20-page PDF that's going to tell you all the click-through rate for 30 keywords. Nobody cares. These are the things that are going to matter. These are the things we're going to do. Let's make that conversation happen and then move on to the next thing.
Not to jump in, but I 100% agree. I think it all comes back to the so what. So what does this mean? And the so what is not found in the click-through rate for 30 keywords. It's found in when you bubble it all up and you think about it from the 30,000 foot view. What does this mean and how does this impact the next steps I need to take?
Right.
And that's also where, sorry to jump in, we tie it always back to our goals. Mm-hmm. Our first conversation with our client manager is, what does success mean to you? And then we work backwards from that. So then we're always going back to that conversation and all of the data we're talking about and all of the optimizations we're looking for, and like those, this is what we should do next, tie back into that goal. So the buy-in keeps going all the time.
Yep.
So first, you never have to apologize for accidentally talking over me, because
we're just jiving off of each other.
Because people are here to take care about you. And I want to hear more about the 3 for 3. But before we close the book on this, this way of reporting, this real time and also the more traditional reporting, I want to know if that has really made a difference in your relationship with your clients. Is it just kind of like a nice to have, like, oh, this is a value add and it kind of separates this agency from the next one? Or is it something more meaningful? Is it something they review regularly? How, in a general sense, describe it to me, Ashley.
Yeah, I would say it's not something every agency provides. So I'll start there. A lot of agencies don't have the real-time access to data. And so that is something that does set us apart. And it sounds like both of us apart in that we do provide that real-time access. Whereas others, it's either less frequent, less comprehensive, or just different altogether. So I would say in that regard, I think that is something that sets you apart. I also would say more and more clients expect the digital consultants they're working with to level up as well. And so what they want from us is not just infrequent access to data. They want real-time insights and us to be a true partner and extension of their team. And the only way to be accomplishing that is for us to be as ingrained in what's going on in the business as they are.
Right. And go ahead.
100% agree. I would say, I think the best example is I was on a call the other day with a client, and it wasn't me being part of the call. It was other vendors and other people having this conversation. And they invited me because they wanted to make sure, like, when they talked about data, they trusted me to listen to what these people were saying and say whether or not it really was up to par, up to truth. And that's because we've had a very consultative relationship the last couple of years of really being able to talk about data, and they know that I'm going to be doing the best by them because of all of that in the relationship we had, and that we're so transparent when things work and when things don't work. Like, they trust me on either side of that. So then I'm the first person, and that's what we see more and more with our client managers. They're the first person we see they want to go talk to about the data, or when something doesn't seem right in the data. We're the people they're going to come talk to. And I think as clients have come and gone, as they come back to us, we hear the same thing of this is one of the reasons why I came back, because I have someone who's that actually invested to be a partner with me, not just telling me what I should be doing and spending.
Right. And I feel like I've taken us off track because we're here to talk about you. And I just want, from my own curiosity, I'm sure also our viewers are interested in knowing how these things work and what the client reaction is. But let's move back to our search marketers of the year and that 3 for 3 approach. Colleen, my retention isn't so great nowadays. I have read through everything multiple times preparing for this, but it's about pulling out 3 data points that are actionable. How would you describe it one more time for our viewers?
I would say the start of any conversation we're having about a recap, quarterly, what are 3 things we noticed in the data? And what are 3 recommendations for your strategy we're giving you because of data? So the first part of it, the 3 things we notice are kind of like it's the answer to how have you been performing without showing them a dashboard with 20 numbers on it that don't make any sense or don't really impact. Like, yes, your bounce rate went up by 10%, but that goes to a so what type of answer. So we're pushing people to really talk about data points that are going to matter and not try to give them everything. Yes, if you want to spend a deep dive in depth on a page by page breakdown of bounce rate, we will totally do that. But 90% of the clients don't want that. And they just want to know, am I okay? How can I do better to sell more cars? So that's really where we try to take this approach of 3 things we've noticed about your customers and the data in the last month. So a lot of it will be like, we got more leads through this, we got more conversions here. And then it's them looking at the data and saying, here are the recommendations I would make to make our numbers even better, but it's based off of data. So the example that comes into mind is we did a lot of work around, with one of my clients, removing call to action buttons. And so we sat down and I said, all right, looking at the data, here are the 3 things I've noticed. And here's what we're going to excuse me. Here's what we're going to do to remove data and remove buttons, because I'm looking at the data and 90% of your clients click on only this button. So let's remove everything else. And then we'll judge it in a month and say, was it worth it? Was it not worth it? So by that kind of breaking down and looking at the little aspects of the data, it really helped to make sense to our clients and our dealers and everybody else about it was a tangible, easy conversation to have.
And I'm sure it's in everyone's best interest to be able to present all this information to the clients as well. I want to move back. We're going to look internally a little bit. I want to ask Ashley this question because it's pertained to my work history before in a different workplace. You've developed a mentorship program. We had one of those at an agency I worked at, and a Slack recognition channel, kind of like a kudos type thing. I've also had experience with that at a past employer, and I feel like they're hard to get right, if I may come off as being a bit cynical, which I absolutely am. How do you ensure that these types of initiatives are taken seriously, that they have staying power, that it actually means something?
Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, it starts with, I work for a great company that has fantastic culture. And I think part of our culture is collaboration and really being team oriented. We have values that, we put forth every single day. And so in that, I think one of the things that the employees at Metric Theory love to do is celebrate one another, kind of putting the meaning behind the work in addition to bringing, that value to the client. And they love paying it forward. They've had a lot of mentors, and we have that mentorship program, and they know how much it meant to them. And so it just is almost this self propelling type of thing, in that
we say flywheel. Marketers say flywheel. You have to say flywheel.
Flywheel. So I would say, because of that, I think it perpetuates itself. And I think from day one, we are constantly demonstrating to our employees and setting the example that we want to celebrate each other, and people feel that and feel how much it matters to them to be recognized, and constantly want to pay that forward. All I needed to do was just give us the platform in order for individuals to be able to do that. And so it took really me just setting up a kudos channel, explaining what it was about, and within a day, there was at least 5 or 6 different kudos, and that constantly happens every single day. So I'd love to take full credit for it, but definitely I think it's also just my peers and the culture.
And the culture is a huge deal, especially, nowadays. There's so much scrutiny revolving everything about human resources, the amount of diversity you have. But with regards to the pandemic, it seems like morale becomes even more important. We aren't working in close proximity to each other. It doesn't feel like you're in the trenches the same way. Do you feel like that has played a part? Has it made your initiatives even more important, or are things pretty much like, has it just kept people on track?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's more important now than ever. I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and one of the things that I think is really important to remember as a manager, is the idea that people don't bring their personal life to work is a fallacy. Everybody has stuff that they're dealing with, especially in 2020, where it's been objectively one of the most difficult years I think many people have had to experience. And really being able to level set with your teams, having that empathy for where they're coming from is one piece. But I think also the recognition, continuing to show them that you're there for them, that they're seen, that even though maybe this isn't going well, here's one thing that you're absolutely nailing, and we're here for you. And as a team, we have your back. I think that's what the mentorship program has allowed for, and that's what the Kudos channel has allowed for, is almost a spark of light in a lot of days that have been relatively dark.
Yes, that's very, very well put. It really resonates with me as well. We are coming up on time, and I wanted to ask you both if there was anything else that we haven't mentioned here that you really wanted to emphasize as Search Market of the Year. And actually, I'm going to give you some time to think about it, but that question may already be answered in this question that I'm going to pose right before. Is, you're Search Marketer of the Year for very different reasons, but when I ask people, I'm sure you have input on hiring if you're not hiring people directly yourself for your own teams. You have different priorities, essentially. But a lot of people are saying that experience and skills, they're not as valuable as characteristics like curiosity. But that's just what I've heard. And those marketers aren't you. So I was wondering, are there a set of characteristics, skills, things that you see and you're just like, that you're going to make a great search marketer? And if you could tell me about that. So I would like to hear now from Colleen.
This is actually one I'm passionate about because I have a religious studies degree, and I now manage an analytics platform for 5,000 websites. So I come at this world from a very different place than a lot of people. So there's a lot, and especially now, like if you don't have the utmost tech skills, or you're not writing Python or trying to code your own AI to do whatever sort of thing in technical SEO or search right now, you're not as strong. And I still contend that the ability to first have relationships and that kind of customer service, customer management skills matters more than any technical thing whatsoever. I would 100% rather take somebody with just a general poli-sci, English, whatever degree and teach them and allow them to grow their skills from that than to hire a much more technical who's not willing to be part of that collaboration, be part of that team, and really have that part of it. Because I have seen throughout my years, those very technical, skilled people are never going to be the long-term people you want at a company. They may not actually always be the best team members either, because there's a me mentality. I think if you're that type that can learn and prove, then you keep fighting for that and like fighting for your place in that. But that to me it seems like there's this weird shift that everyone has to have all of these huge technical skills in order to be a really strong marketer. And I call a lot of BS on that, because all of the best people I've seen who are really good and still innovative are willing to try and are also willing to test and admit it didn't work, rather than having all of these technical skills and going about it that way.
I would say that everybody who's won the Search Marketer of the Year in the years that I've been with Search Engine Land just seems to have a high degree of technical competency and those people skills, and they all work at it too. So it's not like you can't eventually work your way up to being a force in both sectors. What about you, Ashley? What do you think?
Yeah, I would say I would make mine less specifically, but overarching. I would say what I look for when I'm hiring, and also what I look for and what I think makes individuals the most successful in this field, is drive and humility. And I think if you think about how that permeates itself through all facets of what we do, it's always present, the individuals who are most successful. So drive, to really make sure that you're taking ownership over your own development. If you feel like there's an opportunity, you're going after it, you're being proactive with your clients, you're being proactive internally. And humility, kind of going back to what Colleen just said, but having the humility to understand that you might not know best and that you need to have a testing mentality. And you need to be willing to accept that sometimes you just have to throw best practices out the window because the data tells us that it's not the best route to take. Or humility to accept that if a client is upset or if internally, there was a mistake made, you're learning from it and constantly trying to have that self-awareness attitude, to recognize your part to play, and how you can continue to improve. And then that goes back to the drive piece. The more that you can be self-aware in that aspect, the more drive you have to adjust it, that'll just propel you. And if I see somebody with those two qualities, I absolutely want to work with them, because they're not only going to constantly level themselves up, but they're going to inspire me to do the same.
I can see why you're in charge of managing so many people. Actually, you both have me feeling both inspired and kind of inadequate. I feel a little bit inadequate here. So I wanted to return to that previous question. Is there anything else you'd like to really reinforce about your journey and the skills that it takes before we kind of close this off for everyone? Let's head back to Colleen for that.
Yes, and I think in our previous conversation, you had kind of asked about why I started publishing more on LinkedIn rather than other places. And I think that goes for that despite all of my success, I'm still not considered one of like the in the know people in the industry. I still sit on the outside because I don't have that technical background and because I don't have the fanciest. I love my clients, but they're car dealers. We are selling cars every day. Like, they're not the fancy shiny thing. And for a lot of within the industry, I am looked down upon because of that. So that is why I've started doing my own publishing on LinkedIn, because nobody would want to publish what I had to say. I had a voice and I wanted to do something. And I also wanted to be able to have another female voice within that. But at the same point, not to be try to be confident in yourself and what you're putting out there, and realize that even those of us who are lucky enough to have this honor of winning the year still find some of the same problems and struggles of getting pitches accepted or being considered an authority or not looking down upon. I cannot tell you how many times even now a conversation will occur and it's 3 guys talking about analytics and I won't be considered at all, despite all of my skills and successes. So to keep at it regardless, I think is something I'm really trying to push for, but also try to own it yourself, is that there's so many places to get your voice out there, to keep working at that, and don't ever feel like you're not measuring up, because I've just decided whatever to that, and we're just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if people want to listen, that's great, but it's not going to be the end all or be all.
And hopefully this video, this award will be part of your platform to, get people to pay attention in places that they haven't been, because, it's just kind of a tragedy that only really 1 or 2 types of people are looked at for these speaking gigs or for writing. And that creates kind of just this tunnel where everything sounds the same and it's alienating for everyone else. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Ashley, any last minute words of wisdom for us?
I was trying to rack my brain on what I wanted to say as my last words. And it's kind of hard because I have a lot. But I will say, in the spirit of the metric theory culture and in the spirit of kind of what I tried to present for my direct reports, I thought it would be helpful if maybe I left people with some parting wisdom of just some of the lessons that I learned. And I think what's helped me be as successful as I have been in my role. And I think these tie both to client services as well as management and individuals who want to manage. And so just a couple really quick thoughts. The first one is, I think customization is key. And I brought this up a couple times before, but understanding what matters to your client, understanding what matters to your direct report, and realizing nothing in business is ever one size fits all. If you customize your approach, it will work out. And that's maybe customizing how you provide feedback to a direct report, or the way in which you speak to your client, whether they want you to be relationship oriented or direct. And then, the last piece is transparency. No one is perfect. And even though we've won this award and I feel so appreciative of it, we are still imperfect people that are trying to continue to level up every single day. And so I think being humble and realizing that if you're a manager and you mess up and you make a mistake and a conversation goes sideways and you had the best intentions, owning that and just calling it like you see it with your direct report, apologizing for it, will build way more trust than trying to maintain this perception that you are this perfect human, because that makes you very difficult to relate to. And same thing with clients. You're not always going to nail the client conversation or whatever discussion you're having. There will be a mistake that's made, and that will happen. But the more, as Colleen mentioned earlier, that you can express and be transparent about your failures as much as you're transparent about your wins, that's what makes for a lasting, successful client relationship. And that's what makes for a strong partnership.
Strong words there. Strong final words. Thank you both for sharing your experiences with us, with the viewers. Can you tell them how they can get in touch with you if they want to ask you any questions about what you said or your approach on things? Let's start with Ashley.
Yeah, of course. I would say I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Please just look me up. My email is also connected to my LinkedIn. So anyone and everyone, if you ever want to nerd out on digital advertising, which I love to do, I'm sure Colleen and I will do a lot after this. Or alternatively, if you just want advice or input, I know there's a lot of difficulty right now, especially with employment. Anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to reach out.
And Colleen?
I would say I'm over on Twitter. My profile picture is not actually a picture of me, but it's a picture of Kermit. So when you're looking for the Colleen Harris on Twitter, it is the Kermit headshot there, because if we can't have a little fun with all of this, it's not worth it. That's first and foremost. There we go. If we can't have a little bit of fun, it's not going to be worth it in the day. And I would say that too, particularly my pivot and focus is a lot, right, in the next year going to be around Google Analytics 4 and being able to translate that into what a small business or like a dealership day-to-day needs to know about that. So for those interested in those types of conversations, I'm also on LinkedIn as well. I do have my headshot up there if you find me there. Those are probably the two places and a lot of what I'm talking about right now.
That's Ralphie. That's my cue. Thank you all very much for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the rest of SMX.